I don't want regret in my life on anything. People want to be helpful and kind. Circumstances that make them not be. And it's if you push on those circumstances, you're not going to have a good interaction. Just remember what's important.
What is up, everybody? And welcome back to the School and Struggle Podcast. It is our belief that the only guarantee in life is that we are all going to struggle, and how we choose to embrace our struggles is what empowers us to become the best versions of ourselves. I am Pete, coming to you live, and we are getting right back into the second chapter of Keith's story. So I'm going to pick it up right where we left off as when things started to turn for him, and let's get right into it. Here we go.
One of the big reporters tweets, the NBA is actively in discussions on how to finish the 2020 NBA season, and said one of the sites under consideration, Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida. And it just gave it a whole new life. And that was when everything flipped for me, where it was, I'm done with doubting. I can do this. This is going to be what I do. And that's where it all kind of took off from there at a whole different level for me. This just exploded with that. So we put that out there. I by no means take credit for the bubble at Walt Disney World. It was not something I think that was unique to my thought process. I was just the first one to put virtual pen to virtual paper and get it posted somewhere for the world to see.
I don't care what you say. I think it was your idea. I think it came from
sometimes
you.
from
It was
folks,
not a
yes.
seed in their thought process until you planted that seed.
Sure,
So
I'll take it.
you
But
can
it was
say
just that
whatever you want.
unique connection, right? Of this crossing of my two worlds, my 20 years with Disney, my lifelong love of the NBA, and my knowledge of I know what both of these sides need to do to make this work. And it was pushing. And then when it became a reality, one of the coolest things was I had multiple teams, players, coaches, front office executives, people from the NBA itself, other reporters who were going to travel and live in the bubble to report on these games, sending me emails, sending me messages on social media. Hey, we're coming down there in July. Like, is it really as hot as they say? What about this? What about that? Asking a million questions. And it was one of the coolest things that I'll ever go through. And it's funny, I always tell people whenever I get a chance to talk a little bit about the story it was one of the coolest things in the world that I wish never happened. Because it was just an output of a horrible, horrible situation for the world. But it's one of the things where I know you guys talk a lot about, what are things that get you through. One of my things that I push all the time is, it's not really the when life gives you lemons, make lemonade, but it's just, you got to push through. You got to make the best of things and try to make it better and find another way. Just keep working, find another way. And that's something that I really push all the time is, all right, this isn't working, find another way. And that was one of the things where for me, because, PR regular conversations, but also my wife was like, don't quit, don't get frustrated, stick it out. You got to see this through. It's, you only had 3 weeks, and she still says, she's like, those first 3 weeks were the happiest 3 weeks I had seen you in years. I loved my time with Disney, but by the end, I was miserable doing those two jobs and sleeping 4 hours a night and not really, I was struggling. It was rough. Pete knows, it would take a toll, on anything I tried to do fitness wise. I couldn't sustain because it was just, I was constantly on the go. It was like I would leave for work. Leave to drop my daughter off at school between 6:30 and 7. I'd be in the office by about 7:30, 8 o'clock. I'd be there till 4:35, 5:30, 6 o'clock. Then it was straight home or straight down to downtown Orlando to cover a Magic game. Back home, in bed, falling into bed at 2 a.m. And there was no time in there to be like, I want to work out, I want to do these things. And I had to make those changes because it was just, I knew where this was going. And it was, as much as I loved it, something was going to have to give one side or the other. And I always say, I had two things I loved. And in order for me to be productive and happy and what I wanted to be, I had to sacrifice one of the things that I loved.
I just hear so many people say, I'm too old to make a change, or I can't give this thing up. It's too comfortable for me. And the fact that you truly lived that out and you did it is such an inspiration for me. And then the timing of it with 3 weeks later, everything shuts down, and, you've been teetering on making this decision for 5 years, and you finally commit to that thing, and then it's like someone sticks a knife in your side. It's like, yeah, you made that decision, you're done, and you didn't go back on it. You easily could have. Your boss was like, "Yo, we'd be happy to have you back whenever. You've done a stellar job here," and I just think it is such an inspirational story. So, what's transpired for you with that career since then?
Yeah, everything is more in balance in my life. I still lead a very weird schedule. Covering the league is weird, right? It's funny though. My time with Disney to some extent prepared me for that, right? Because with Disney, Pete knows one of the things that gets drilled into you is we work when others play. Right, we're working on Christmas Day, so for me to cover 5 NBA games on Christmas Day is no big deal because I hadn't had Christmas Day off for years. Now, instead of doing a job while also monitoring the NBA on the side on my laptop, I was able to now I just do the NBA on Christmas Day. But I am in a position where I control a lot more in my day. I have no 9 to 5 responsibilities. I have deadlines that I have to hit for writing and those kind of things. And what it's allowed me to do, which quite honestly, I'm only just now regrouping and fully settling into a fully new routine, is I can now work in time to say, all right, this is what I'm going to do. But because of the way my day is structured, I multitask. So one of the things I do is I listen to a lot of podcasts about basketball because now that's where a lot of news and things happen is it gets released through that medium. So one of the things I do now is when I know I have an hour long podcast to listen to, I save it, then I load it up and I go on a walk. And I go, for like a 30 to 60-minute walk and listen to that podcast. I was brought to balance it with my family now too, where yeah, our rhythm's a little weird because I don't really get a full break until end of July, early August, right around this time of year, and that's only a few weeks before school starts back up. But that's when we put things. That's when I saw Pete in person at his home. We traveled up there at the end of the NBA season last year, and we traveled up to New England and saw my family and saw Pete. So it's that balance that's back now. I've also now committed to, you know what? If I'm tired, I'm gonna go to bed. I'm not gonna stay up till 2 in the morning.
I've been
I'm
trying to
go-
talk to him about sleep for years now.
I know, and it was so funny. When you guys did your whole sleep show, I was like, oh man, this is like I think this was aimed at me. Um,
It might have been.
I go to bed and then I record the game and then I get up at a reasonable hour the next morning and I watch it because unless it's something where I need to do an immediate reaction to it, I need to stay up till 2 in the morning.
You spend your time writing. You have a YouTube show and a podcast. Are those the main
The
three
YouTube
things you have
show
going
and
on?
the podcast are one. Thankfully,
Okay.
we record and release it as a show and also a podcast. So really, that's not a choice. Yeah, I write. I do in season on average of 20 to 30 radio spots a week, which are 15 minutes ish each time in that range. Very busy at the off season in the trade deadline because of the salary cap work that I do with the roster coverage that I do. That comes up at those times. But yeah, it's the writing, it's the YouTube show, it's the podcast. I have a few sites that I work for, and then beyond that, it's a lot of just connecting with people through things. A lot of that over the last couple of years has been virtual because it's our media access has been limited. But prior to that, it was at games, at things like Summer League. That's where my Disney experience has really helped me because at Disney, we get taught be open, be approachable, go talk to people
Mm.
just out of the blue. You have to start a conversation. And I have no problem doing that. I'll walk up to a player, an agent, a front office executive and say, hey, I'm Keith Smith. And a lot of times they know who I am through work. Sometimes they don't, but I'll introduce myself and then, hey, I was wondering about this. Occasionally it'll be I'm not going to talk about that. So, and then we'll have a general conversation and talk. Everybody's really nice. It's very people are generally I think more approachable than we fear people sometimes, and it's not really the way it is, right? People want to be helpful and kind. I think that's the natural inclination, and and it's circumstances that make them not be, and it's if you push on those circumstances, you're not going to have a good interaction. So when it's all right, it's not where you want to go, cool, let's have a different conversation, let's talk about something else.
I
Yeah.
just think it's so cool because like our conversations have evolved from like, oh, I had to go to this meeting this week and then blah 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 blah, and now you're all every Sunday you're like, yeah, I still can't believe I live this life.
Yeah,
I still can't believe that I cover the NBA because I've always wanted to do it as a little kid and I didn't do it for 25 years and now I'm doing it and I just think it's neat. Todd, do you have any
Oh God,
questions or thoughts?
I have so many questions. It's ridiculous. So, first, Keith, I want to thank you for sharing your time with us, but with me for sure. Like, I don't pay attention to sports whatsoever, as you may know from if you listen to the show. And so, knowing that there was a thing called the NBA bubble, and knowing that you had some kind of awesome potentially hand in that is like it just raises my awareness to something I had no idea about, and it also reduces the I don't know if it's a reduction, but it's like it underlines the idea that we're just all people, right? Like it was just this guy who was nerded out about NBA, and then suddenly the perfect storm happened, which may or may not have had some hand, but and then this is the evolution of that. I think that's really cool. I have two questions, I think, and I think you just touched on the last one at the end, but I heard throughout your story this notion of I met these people. They said, we'll make it work for you, and you just give us a little bit of yourself. And it sounds like you've had good connections, like across all of the successes or all of kind of the high points of what you recounted here. And my question is there an attribute that you attribute to that? Like, Disney will make it work out. The school PE thing. You just give us a little bit, and we'll help support you in that. So is it just because and I don't want to afford it, but it could have been the question that you last talked to, where and we all breathe the same air. It doesn't really matter if you go talk to somebody; just be open and willing to engage, and that may or may not be the answer. But I want to ask you.
Yeah, I think it is that openness. I think I'm very open to trying things. I learned very early age. It's something that my parents drilled into me is sometimes it's just as important to know the things you don't know than to know what you do know,
Hmm.
and that is for me is something where I there's a lot of things I don't know. There's way more that I don't know than I do know, but I'm always open to learning new things and experiencing new things, I it's funny. I don't want to say that I'm fearless because Pete knows I'm certainly fearful. It took me a very long time to leave my job with Disney, mostly out of fear. It's that sense of I don't want regret in my life on anything. I didn't want to regret not coming to Disney to do the internship. I didn't want to regret not chasing this NBA thing. It's something as simple as I didn't want to regret not talking to the girl I thought was cute in my training class, who now we've been married for 17 years and a couple months. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to have regrets in those things. And I want to push. I owe it to my mom and dad. I don't fear hard work. Push yourself. Like it's gonna be worth it in the end. Those are the things I think. For me, it's that openness, that willing to work, and then I think I can be moody, I can be grumpy for sure. Don't get me wrong, but I tend to think I try to be a very positive person when I need to be. It's hardest for me to be positive about myself and the things I'm looking to do. I find it much easier to pick up and lift others and help them get to where they want to be than it is to help myself get to where I want to be. But it is one of those things where I do try to keep that in mind of like you got this, you can do this.
That's awesome.
There's some famous study done with people that were 90 years old or older, and basically the research showed that the 90 plus year olds were saying it wasn't the things that they did in life that didn't go well that they regretted. It was the things that they wanted to do and never attempted to do, and that tends to be the biggest regret in human life is what is it that I didn't do that I really wanted to do. And I think that's why your story is so special. It's obviously very special to me because of our friendship, but I just think in general, you followed that. Like these 90-year-olds had to live 90 plus years to figure that out, and you went for it in very uncomfortable times. And I just think it's really, really cool. Todd, what
Yeah,
was your
sorry, I just want to say one other quick thing. Sorry, Todd. I promise I'll let
No,
you
go
talk
ahead.
on your own show here, at least for a minute or two.
That's not
Um,
my show.
it's
I
our show?
I am. I say all the time, and I know this is something that resonates with Pete. Is you're never too old to try something new. Just try it. What's the and if you've done things the right way leading up to it, you're probably going to be okay if it doesn't work. That was something for me as I knew, I say all the time, Disney's not going anywhere, right? Disney makes it through recessions. Disney makes it through travel shutdowns. Disney made it through COVID. Disney's going to be here no matter what. Because when people want to travel, they generally want to do it with family and friends, and they like to go somewhere where they know they're going to have a great experience and they're going to be happy. So that tends to attract them to Disney. So I knew if this doesn't work out, I can always come back to Disney. But I only knew that because I was leaving it in a good place. I don't burn bridges. I don't push people out of my life. I try very hard not to cut anybody off from those kind of things. And it always stuck with me. My last boss was phenomenal, but I had a boss before that who, when I told him, hey, I'm doing, he knew I'd covered the NBA for years. And quite frankly, probably looked the other way a handful of times when he shouldn't have, when I knew I maybe wasn't as engaged in a meeting as I should be because I was following news on my laptop. This is really embarrassing to admit. I started positioning myself in every meeting that I went to in a corner so that no one could look over my shoulder and see I was paying attention. But I also knew I was pretty good at my job and I can multitask very well. That is probably my single best skill is I can multitask very, very well, and I can engage while doing something else. So my wife would probably say otherwise. But I know at least work wise, I was good with that. But one of the things is this other boss said to me, he goes, there's two things I live by is one is no one's ever going to die saying, I wish I'd spent another day at work. And then his other thing was he would always say, just remember what's important. It's not going to be about the job. It's not going to be about how much money you make. It's not going to matter all that stuff. It's about the people, and do what you want to do that is going to take care of your people that you need to take care of, but it's going to put you with the people you want to be. And then what he always ended it with, but remember, one of those people is you. You need to make sure you're taking care of you within those people. And that was something that's always stuck with me, and I've held on to that.
Right before I was leaving for one of my kind of big trips early on, one of my neighbors walked up to me and said, Pete, just remember this as you travel throughout the globe when this crazy trip you're about to do. You can always come home and have a sandwich. And that was just really, really assuring to me. Like, if everything goes horribly, I can come home and have a sandwich. And that was helpful. What do you got, Todd?
I have so many, but I've got to cut through the weeds. I know at one point you said kind of when it sounds to me like after you kind of made the shift into the analytic side of basketball and like knowing all these caps and all this stuff and being able to articulate that to other people, that you began to feel the confidence and success of maybe I do know what I'm talking about. Maybe people do really like this thing or see benefit in it. And I saw in your face, which the listeners can't get, but a reflection of myself. And I wanted to ask you, did it take a single event to flip the switch and quiet that imposter that you always knew like was lingering about? Or was it like, I don't know the best way, like, it seems like when the thing took off, like the major thing, you were like, yeah, that's it. Right. And now I'm never going back. So is that how you see it? Or was it like just a culmination of smaller little steps that finally got you to the thing that was like, ah?
Yeah, it was probably a lot of it was just little stuff building on it. Finding that my people that liked the same thing I liked, that were super interesting. But I always go back to there was a coach, he coached the Orlando Magic, this guy named Scott Skiles.
Oh, an NBA coach. Go figure that out.
He was an NBA coach, correct, for the Orlando Magic. Super grumpy guy all the time. And the Magic were terrible. So imagine we're interviewing this guy night after night after his team has lost games, often in very embarrassing fashion. And I remember one time I asked him a question. I was like, you're at the end of a long season. How can you keep guys motivated who maybe they're not going to be here next year? Maybe they're not going to do that. And he paused and he looked up and he said, that's a really good question. And then he went on to give an answer. And for me, getting that's a really good question from him in that moment was I can do this. Like now I'm glad you used the word imposter syndrome, because there's occasionally times when I still feel like that, where I'll feel like, man, I'm in this locker room with these dudes who make millions of dollars, sometimes these big name reporters. I'm just a kid from Bridgewater, Massachusetts, who stumbled into doing this. And like, what am I,
You didn't stumble into it. You worked your butt off to get there. Give yourself credit. Sorry.
True. But that's how it feels at times. But getting that answer back of, that, and then And I will say he gave a very thoughtful answer after that. And then anytime you get one of those, it's almost like no matter what you're driven by, if you get that praise, it still feels really good, right? It still feels great to like
Mhm.
get that praise from people that you're working with and those kind of things. So that's the one that really sticks out to me that said, you can do this. This is like I'm here. I can play with these guys. Like I don't have to sit back. I don't have to hold my questions, my thoughts because I'm not good enough or whatever it is. I was like, I can do this. I can get these. And the cool thing aside to that story was this guy who he covered the magic more directly than I did. So he was with him every day, practices, road trips, all that stuff. He came over and he goes, I've been with this guy all year long and I've never gotten a good question response back. And man, that just,
Nice.
that made my day. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's cool. I had one more, but I don't know if it like I'll just throw it out there. You can answer if you want. When you can in my industry, I see this a lot with people who are especially our age, where I could leave, but I have these these Disney handcuffs, or all these different reasons not to leave that inspire fear and hold us back. And I wondered, you said you had different revenue streams, and a lot of times people they always put it monetarily. Typically, like it's always
Mhm.
something related to that. Well, it's my benefits, or it's my kids, or something that helps perpetuate those things. Was there a way that you simplified the way to math doing anticipating that change? Because a lot of people are like, I don't even know what to think about to consider for the delta would be between what I have now and what it would they see it as be missing, but what it would be.
Yeah, this is where my combination of Disney and the NBA stuff comes together because it's all about math in so much of my world. So I literally sat down and did what I always do. I made a spreadsheet.
Hmm.
So here's my Disney income. Here's all of our bills. Here's everything we do. Pete knows this. We several years ago, just through our 20s and 30s, and doing things like last minute buying tickets to go to the Super Bowl to watch the Patriots blow an undefeated season. Um,
In some dark alley and inside a closet in a sketchy apartment.
um, I we accumulated a lot of debt, and my wife and I were looking at it and saying we make way too much money to be living paycheck to paycheck like
Hmm.
this. This is crazy. And had we not gotten ourselves in line several years before I made this career change, I never would have been able to do it because I wouldn't have been able to see how to make the math work.
So this is
We
where my
said,
question. So this is a question: is would you have just not have done it if you couldn't have put the analytics to it?
yeah, probably. I
Yeah.
probably would have if I couldn't sit down and plug in all the numbers coming in versus what's going out and know we'd be okay. I wouldn't have done it because it wouldn't have been fair to my wife and daughter. I would have said no. That's not. I
Interesting.
can't ask them to sacrifice more than what we're already going to sacrifice. And I will say this too: she is great. She's super detail oriented. So she would be like, hey, remember, we only do this once a year, but we have to pay for this. And then she was the one who was like, now remember, yeah, you're leaving. I have benefits, but my benefit costs go up
Hmm.
because now I have to carry you. You're not carrying yourself anymore. So all those things. So we sat down and like I said, I built a spreadsheet, did all the math out, and it was all right, we got to find X. Then it became, where can we find X? How do we find to cut X out of our lives that won't negatively impact us? Because again, I didn't want them to have to give up anything.
Yeah.
So we did little things like we changed our cable package and eliminated probably 100 channels I don't think we ever
Yeah.
watched. And
Right.
that saved $10 a month. And then we changed this, we changed that. And when we started cutting those things back, and it's so funny, I can't tell you how many times we've now sat and been like, we should have done that
Yeah.
15 years ago,
Yeah.
right? And before all this, but that was just one of these added benefits. But you're absolutely right. If I couldn't have made the math work, I wouldn't have done it. I would have said
That's
nope.
interesting.
And I'll
But on the
tell
flip
you,
side of that, you worked hard enough to create those revenue streams to make it work. It wasn't like, yeah, this money's haphazardly coming in from my MBA stuff. I'm not really working hard to get it. Yeah, I think I can make it work. It was like, no, like I have this revenue stream, and now I'm going to go try to get this one and this one, and
I
I'm
wouldn't
going to keep
push.
working. I'm going to
Yeah.
keep working until the equilibrium is balanced enough to make this switch.
One of the things people say to me all the time is, man, you write everywhere or you've written everywhere. And that's part of why, because it was, hey, can I do something for you once a week, once a month, every other week, whatever it is. And it would be, yeah, we can do that. We can pay you X for that. And then we'd put that together and then we'd put all those things together. And that's how we were able to stay in a good place, other than that blip at the start of the pandemic, which but that's no different than millions of people around the world struggled through that period. We came back on the other side, but yeah, I wouldn't have made it work. And I'll tell you, Todd, your co-host here, I can't tell you how many times this is what this guy will do and who he is was, hey, if things really go sideways, I got you. Like we'll make sure you're okay. And it was always like, yeah, and I knew it wasn't a hollow gesture because I know today if I say like, hey, I need something. I remember you telling the story, Peter, your buddy saying, go in my sock drawer,
I
right?
was just gonna say
Grab some
that.
money. That was the pay it forward, right? Was I knew if I needed it, but I also know that that's only there because Pete knows I'm not going to ask for that to then turn around and be like, hey, yeah, we went to Paris for the
Yeah, right.
week, right? Like it's that wouldn't be what it would have been a situation where like, hey, we're not going to make the mortgage this month. Like, can you help a little bit? And I know that was there, and in I will tell you, my parents were just like they were initially like, don't go work at Disney. They were the number one people like, are you insane to give
Mm,
up this career? And I think the difference is between our age, right? We're all roughly the same age, and our parents is they were get a career, stay there forever, make as much money as you can, and then retire. And for me at least it was I could have kept doing that and I could have let the basketball thing stay a hobby or I could have drastically cut back and said it's just going to be part-time, but it was I don't want to do that. I want to go do this instead. And I also know if I work hard enough at the basketball stuff, I'll rebound. That'll replace what I was making at Disney. I can figure that part of it out. We'll be okay. We'll be comfortable. And now that things are getting a little bit back more to normal, we're turning that corner and getting back to headed to where I want to be. But it is, I find that was a big learning for me is the motivations are very different between the generations where it was, in their mind, it was like, why would you ever leave,
mhm.
a stable career where you're probably going to be, you could be there for 40 years, retire and then be good. And I remember having the conversation and saying to my dad, I remember saying to him, I said, I think you think that way because through your career, sometimes things went a different way and a place would shut down and you get laid off or whatever it was. And I said, for me, I know that's always there and I can go back to it if I want. I said, but I don't want to work for 40 years, retire, and then be like, now what? Now what do I do?
Yep.
Like I don't I want to do it now, versus waiting, down the line.
So to bring this all back full circle, I think what's really cool is when the fit was hitting the shan with Keith and just like trying to figure out the revenue streams and all that. I remember one Sunday we were talking and he said to me, hey, guess what? And I said, what? He goes, you know those roster sheets I've been doing since middle school? I go, yeah. He goes, so I put that up on the internet and people can pay to view them. And I have a ton of people that are paying me every month to look at my sheets.
That's awesome.
And I just thought this thing that you started in middle school ended up being one of the things that kind of kept you going when you needed it most. And I thought that was really, really cool. That passion just followed through forever. Kind of ended up being, I'm not going to say a life raft, but it was definitely a helpful thing at a time when you needed it most. And the moral for me or the takeaway for me is chase what you love and things will fall into place.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I do occasionally I'll do talks with people will be like, hey, can you talk about your career and how you got to here? And if it's on the basketball side and it's, and I'll tell them like, I didn't do it for 20 years, right? I did something else for 20 years. And then I would explain to people, like, kind of add on to what Pete says is I have a couple rules that I tell people all the time. Chase what you want to do and it'll probably work out, but work really, really hard. The minute you accept money, do what you say you're going to do for that money. Do it when you say you're going to do it for that money. Don't accept money from people and not deliver because that's not fair to them, right? They're investing in you. You invest back in them by delivering on what they asked for. And then the last thing is, I tell people all the time, if you ever find yourself saying, I don't want to do this, it's probably time to have a conversation with somebody that you trust that you can say, I don't know if I want to do this. But if you love it, it's never going to be work. I say since I left Disney, I've worked really, really hard, but I haven't woken up a single morning feeling like I don't want to do this anymore. And it is every day. There are days just like everybody else where everything goes sideways and the programs aren't working. And there's times I open a Word document and the words won't come. And I get stuck. And I'm just like, I can't write now. Like it's too hard. And I get frustrated and I'll get, angry and those kind of things. But it's still not a bad day. Like it's transition and do something else for a little while and then come back to it. And it always comes back around. And that's where I want everybody chase whatever that passion is. Chase. I had a conversation with a guy the other day who's like, "Yeah, I like basketball." He's like, "But you know what I really like doing?" He's like, "I really like making chairs," and it was the craziest thing to me. We proceeded to have a 30-minute conversation about how you make a chair because that's not. I don't know how to make a chair. Like I don't even know what to do to make a chair. And he went through the whole process of how he makes chairs. And I said, "You know what you should do? You should probably make chairs, man. Like this is like do the basketball thing if you want on the side, like because you can just feel that passion, right? When he was so animated, he was so jazzed about telling me how you make a chair, and then he went into all like I didn't know there were so many kinds of chairs. Like this is now a whole thing for me where I'm like, man, like chairs are like I always thought you just sit on them, right? But he went through this whole thing, and I was like, man, go make chairs, dude. Like that's obviously what you love doing. And he just this was probably 2-3 months ago. And he's like, "Hey, you go. So I wanted to tell you." He's like, "I made a couple chairs. And I sold them for a lot of money." And he's like, "So my wife was like, make more chairs then. Like, why are you still doing these other things?" And so it's just one of those things. Whatever your passion is, chase it, right? Because it'll probably work out. It's not to use that old quote of find the job you love, you'll never work a day in your life, because it's not true. I don't believe that. You will work. You will work really, really hard, but you won't regret it, and you won't be miserable doing it. And
it won't be
that's the
toil,
thing.
right? Like it'll
Exactly.
be something fulfilling.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. You're gonna feel good about the effort you put in at the end of that.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you answered a lot of the questions that I had in this last conversation. So I'm going to pass it over to Todd. Is there any other concluding questions or remarks you had, or
My God, what's your wife's name?
Danielle.
Danielle, you kick ass. Good job.
Best.
I've never met her. It seems like she's pretty cool. But no, just thank you again for your time, Keith. It's been an absolute pleasure. So
no,
thank
Todd,
I'm just
I
grateful
will
that
say I listen to you guys. Pete knows this. I listen on 1.5 or 2 times speed, reconciled in my head. I do that every time I talk to somebody I listen to regularly on podcasts. If I then have an actual, person-to-person conversation with them, I'm like, man, you sound different. And I get that back a lot too.
Yeah,
and my struggle is I talk very fast sometimes. I talk
Same.
a lot. So I talk very fast because I want to get more stuff in there when I do talk a lot. So
the data says that 1% of our listeners come from Florida, and I think that's 100% Keith. So that's great.
Every week, man.
Would you tell me we're the only non-basketball podcast you listen to?
I have 2 non-basketball podcasts to listen to. This one and the other one,
Drunken Dungeons and Dragons.
It's people who get drunk and play Dungeons and Dragons.
And Keith doesn't even play Dungeons and Dragons.
Never played Dungeons and Dragons in my life.
But do they get drunk? Like they start playing and they start drinking at the same time, or they're already? Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it is a funny. It's the stupidest thing in the world, and it never fails to make me laugh and pick me up. And I'll tell you, Todd, you may not know this. Pete knows this. Your podcast, and I know you guys, it drops at different times throughout the week. Sometimes
that's my fault.
It never fails to land when I need something different. When I'm like, I need something that's not an NBA podcast right now. It is the perfect length for school pickup for me. Jump in the car, I throw you guys on, and it never fails if it's a day where I'm like, I can't do another NBA podcast. I need to take, a 30-minute break. It never fails that it's like new, schooling struggle podcast popped up in your feed, and then I play it. So I appreciate you guys. It's it's cool, and I can't tell you. I've told a handful of people like, hey, listen to this. Like, especially certain episodes, especially the sleep one. I try to tell 50, 60 different people. I'm like, go listen to this because this is a huge problem in our industry. None of us sleep enough, and our sleep schedules are such a mess. I can't tell how many people I work with who are like, and they almost wear it as a badge of honor. Whereas like, I was up till 5 writing, and then I was up at 7 to do this, and I'm like, that's bad. Like,
I think those days are gonna be gone in a little while.
We're getting there.
Without Keith, this podcast never would have happened because he launched one before us, and I just picked his brain and was just so inspired by what he's doing. So speaking of which, Keith, before you bounce out, can you just let us know the different platforms or places that people can check out your content?
Yeah, sure. The primary places I write right now for Celtics, Boston Celtics specific coverage is on Celtics blog as part of SB Nation. I cover all things Celtics there. A lot of fun this last year because they made it to the finals. So we get a lot more readers and people discovering us that maybe hadn't. I write for a website called Spot Track, which is where I write about everything salary cap, contract, all that stuff related there. Then I do our show, the NBA Front Office Show, which is on both YouTube, if you prefer to watch, or on anywhere you listen to podcasts. We're on all of them there. It's just called the NBA Front Office Show. Much like I did here today, I monopolize all of it. I let my co-host Trevor speak about 5% of the time, but he's good about teeing me up. We have a blast. We have a lot of fun on that show. We get off into these goofy tangents about Marvel stuff and the Marvel Cinematic Universe and sometimes other weird things, but it's primarily about basketball, and we have a lot of fun doing it.
Awesome. We're so grateful for your time. I was just really psyched that a big trade didn't break in the middle of this conversation because that would have ended our. I know your work truly is 24/7, like you always have to be on.
You probably saw me look at my phone 5 or 6 different times when little notifications.
I texted you and said my hope is that Kevin Durant doesn't make a move during our 90-minute conversation. So thank you so much, and for all of you that are listening, we're so grateful. And we appreciate your ears. We thank you for your time. And as always, we're incredibly grateful for your attention. We are the School and Struggle Podcast. We are out.
See ya.
Thank you, Keith.